Well, if y'all hadn't figured it out by now, back in 1910, when the American Medical Association was formed, it was formed by some of the most powerful families in America, namely the Rockefellers and the Carnegies. Now, the Rockefellers, believe it or not, date back a long time, and one of the early Rockefellers was actually a snake oil salesman before he got into oil. And then, of course, oil became, well, black gold. And humanity, especially here in the West, started running on black gold. And it created the Standard Oil Company and became what it became. Married with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the Warburgs and the banks of Europe and whatnot, we have this matrix of debt and fiat currency and a $23 trillion debt, according to our federal deficit debt, whatever you want to call it. But it's all an illusion. But this power, this money power, or what we call money, gets eat up in the corporations. And so now you're watching our politicians just basically, well, do what politicians do best, sell their souls for money or for election campaign funds, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that allopathic medicine doesn't have its place, because broken bones and heart attacks and everything else we can fix. We can treat you with antibiotics. We can treat you and fix broken bones and trauma and whatnot. However, a good majority of what we actually see in the hospital, in the underclasses of humanity, are there because of poor life choices with regards to smoking too much, drinking too much, eating too much, especially junk food. I can't tell you how many times I, as a nurse, have been told, I don't like water. I don't like vegetables. And I'm like, well, that's why you're here up in the hospital. So it blows me away. I mean, we have a healthcare system, but big pharma and these corporations and these corporate hospitals and all of it have just gone absolutely bonkers. And it's blowing so many of us away that actually try to do good by humanity. You know, I told my son this, and he's studying to be a doctor, or he wants to get into medical school. I'm kind of hoping maybe he doesn't, maybe, I don't know, if things don't turn around. I said there's two types of doctors in this world, Christian: those that actually give a shit about their patients, and those that were simply good in science and wanted to make a lot of money. Now, what we've witnessed over these last 2 years is the older physicians and clinicians willing to speak out that aren't eyebrow deep in debt and scared of losing all that. You know, a lot of the younger doctors that I saw at some of these rallies with their carrying the whatever, the propaganda, they're in debt. And it's simple as that. They don't want to lose their job. They don't want to get fired. You know, the corporation says, well, we're doing this, we're doing that, And so people have to make those decisions in life. And that's kind of scary because, well, you go back and you look at the Milgram experiment and the Solomon Asch experiments with regards to conformity and what humans will do to one another when they're just following orders, as the Nazis did. Well, yeah, there we go. So it's a round robin of finance, of structural systems, of philosophy, of principles of sin, I guess. The church brought us the original hospitals in Western civilization, and the ecclesia, church is a German word, but the ecclesia has always taught that there were 10 commandments, 7 deadly sins, and 1 golden rule. And, you're sitting here watching, we've all witnessed it, greed feeding on slothfulness and gluttony. And greed and slothfulness and gluttony are 3 of the 7 deadly sins. So where does that get us? How do we stop this beast system? where the banks have married with the corporations and the corporations have married with the so-called healthcare system. And it's exposed itself as not being a healthcare system. It's an allopathic, for-profit, corporate-driven, whatever you call it. Your best bet is to stay out of the system. At this point, I tell people all the time, I think personally, from my 24 years at bedside, my personal experience and professional opinion is that you can get more mileage out of a good personal trainer and a good nutritionist than you ever could at this point from a Western-trained medical physician. And when I say that, I mean medical doctors. There's doctors of osteopathic medicine, and there's medical doctors, and there's doctors of chiropractic medicine. I mean, you find a good chiropractic, boy, they're worth their weight in gold. Now, don't tell that to the spine surgeon because, well, he's got his scalpel ready and needs to pay for his Mercedes, so go figure. But there has to be an integrated health system in all modalities of healing. But if you notice, Medicare and the Medicare drug benefit will only enrich Big Pharma, who is owned and invested by whom? Carnegie and Rockefeller and everybody else. And, my understanding is Pfizer is the big boy in Congress. Everybody's invested in Pfizer. Woo, how's that work? I'm blown away, but they're exposing themselves. I mean, they're exposing their cards. I mean, showing us their cards. So I don't know where on the state level, the local level, in the schools or whatnot, but physical education, it used to be taught, and as well as health and nutrition and whatnot. But, I remember over the years, they started putting Coca-Cola machines and vending machines in the schools, and I point this out. My son's 24 now, and when he was 10 years old, we were at Six Flags over Georgia, and we stood in line at the Great American Scream Machine for at least an hour, and it took us that long to get to the front of the line. And I turned around to see how far we came, and I had to take a double take. And I nudged my son, who played baseball, and I encouraged sports or whatnot, and I said, look, 3/4 of the children standing, 3/4 of the children standing in line right there at the Great American Scream Machine were obese, and every one of them had a 32-ounce soda with a curly straw. The health writers have been writing about it for years. They've been warning about it for years. And now it's right in front of us. And when a cold goes through communities or whatnot, listen, it's going to wipe out the weakest. It always has and always will. I'm blown away. I've said this since day one. On any given day, any of us can have a mild cold, a bad cold, a mild flu or a bad flu, a mild stomach bug, or we can be in there hugging the toilet, praying to God Almighty. And it's been that way for thousands of years and will continue to be that way. But the banks and the politicians and all, they're using a bug for medical tyranny, and it just blows me away. So wake up, folks. Stay healthy. Stay out of the system. There's a lot of honest doctors and nurses and pharmacists and virologists and scientists trying to fight this, but there's some of us that are just blah, and it blows me away. Peace and love. Stay healthy, folks. Go to the gym. I tell this to all my patients when I discharge them. Drink plenty of water, eat your vegetables, go to church on Sunday, wear your seatbelt, take your vitamins, exercise vigorously, and keep your hands washed. I used to have to get on to my grandmother about exercise. She would say, well, I walk to the mailbox and back. And then she'd lay up in bed, smoke cigarettes, and watch the War on Terror. Peace.